Cool. Yeah, let's get this thing kicked off. So welcome, folks, to the latest installment of the Horizon Room. We're here in the Horizon Room. We've got Leilani Coffin, who is the CEO of the Learning Council. My name is Chris McMurray. If you don't already know me, I'm the Chief Academic Officer with the Learning Council. I have the enviable opportunity of working directly with schools and educators, and you're my people, so I love being with you. Also on today's call, we have Carla Burkholder. Carla, can you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Dr. Carla Burkholder. I'm the Director of Technology for Schertz-Cibolo Universal City ISD in the San Antonio area in Texas.
Nice. That's a mouthful. I mean, you can't say that 5 times fast, right?
Not.
Schertz-Cibolo. Yep. And I'm sure there's an acronym for that shows up on your business cards. Otherwise, it's like a full extra line or something like that.
That's all we say is SCUC.
Nice. It's so much easier. So today we're jumping into some sort of exploration of a couple of different models. And Carla, you've been around us often enough that you've heard this conversation a couple of different times. Today's conversation is really for folks who haven't really dug into those two models very much, and also to talk about what the implications for that type of a model shift might be. And really, how do we start moving forward as systems in an explicit way to actually think about that model shift? And I think we're going to have some other folks on. There's people that are dialing in, and welcome. If you're in, for sure, raise a digital hand and share your thinking in this, because the whole idea here is that we're sharing ideas and thinking and talking, and it's a safe space. And you know what? If you're scared, that's okay. So are we sometimes, but we want to find solutions for things, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about things that are on the horizon. So what I wanted to start with,
Chris, we should just comment. You and I are live from the field on this.
We totally are.
But like we're in some hotel in Orlando, Florida, because our event is tomorrow in Orlando. So
it's awesome.
This is a Horizon room from the road.
It is. It's a road trip. I think we need T-shirts or something like that, and maybe some groupies. If we could have groupies,
I need my own bus. I need my own bus for the road
trip. I thought I was
a
groupie. I just don't get to follow you around.
You are. We're going to get you a roadie T-shirt, and you're in. You're in. You get to haul the PAs around. I'll let you hold my guitar.
I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we're on the road. We're in Orlando right now, and it's really humid. I had forgotten. It's been a while since I've been down to Orlando, and it's really, really humid. And so, as a northern guy, I kind of don't do humidity very well, but yet here we are. So we are on the road. So what I tossed into this slide here was an interesting picture, because I walked into a school recently, and what I saw was actually an auditorium full of rows of desks. And it looked like cornrows when you're driving on the highway and you pass a cornfield, and it's like, and it was just like that. I thought, oh my gosh, here we are, and we're in this time of great opportunity and great change, and yet we still have classrooms like this, and sometimes we have classrooms like this that have like 5 kids in it, and they're being lectured at, and that's surprising to me, because that's the industrial model. So there's some bullet points here, right? Existing models haven't changed since the turn of the century, right? This is industrial era planning and organization for teaching and learning, and that's outpaced. That's gone. The need for that is no longer existent. The things that people are looking for in the workforce, and the reasons behind the preparation that we're doing with and for kids to get them out into the field and be effective in their workplace, that's changed, right? That stuff is different now, and it's going to be different. I was talking to a colleague about his kindergarten class in the 22-23 fall. They're not graduating until 34? They're not getting out of college until the 2040s ish. We have no idea what that's going to look like, right? We don't know. We don't know what that's going to look like. And technology is one component of that. How many additional jobs are going to be automated by that time, increasing the reliance on us to be humans? And that's what we have. We're faced with that, right? And so, systems and structures, they're inefficient, human resource heavy. Yikes, we know that. Grade classroom class type of a structure doesn't support personalization quite like it should. End users are expecting different things. We've got challenges. There's forces that are pressing down on our schools. I don't know. I'm going to leave them tossing that grenade out there, you folks.
So-
And what do you think?
So Chris, I think a lot of people may not understand that the current system was designed so that people didn't think. They didn't need you to think. They needed you to learn a skill, learn a process, move it on down the line. They didn't need thinkers. Now we need thinkers. And this can't serve that. So I don't know if you've read, I know you have probably, Most Likely to Succeed. I just really feel like every educator needs to read that book.
Yeah,
Especially
absolutely.
the first, 2 or 3 chapters, because man, you learn a lot about how the education system got started.
Right. Totally. Yeah, it's a great one. I know that you've probably seen the documentary that goes along with that, which was actually very well done. It was recognized in the Sundance Festival, and it's really well done. Highly encourage you to Google that and look for that as a resource, because it's, like you were saying, Carla, it's a must see. And anybody who's really trying to change mindset and really sort of shake people into thinking differently about teaching and learning and structures and processes and pathways and things like that, you got to see it. I know that it's not, there's a lot of stuff out there, but this is, you're right, Carla, this is one of those that really does a good job of telling the story for that.
Well,
So,
I think what's happening right now, and I sort of felt this as you started to get into the slide, like the first thing you're saying, like we've been pointing out the problem. Carla, you and I have known each other for so many years. Before Learning Council, you were like BC, right? Like you're before Learning Council. And I feel like what happens as soon as we start bringing up this model conversation and how change needs to happen is I get uncomfortable. In every city that we're in, and you've seen this too, Carla, is you watch people sort of squirm. They're uncomfortable having it pointed out once again that they're doing it wrong, right? And the structure's all wrong, and they need to pay attention to this. So what I think is happening right now is that there's been a distillation since the pandemic into exactly where things need to go, but more importantly than need, because we've all had future ready school, blah, 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 we've heard this. That didn't change structure. That augmented and layered and buttered and jellied on top of, but it didn't really change anything. So I think we're all in agreement, like there's going to be a structural change, right? So we're not saying an apple is going to become a cut up apple. We're going to say you're going to be an orange now. It's a totally different thing, right? It's not even off the same tree. And that even makes people even more uncomfortable, because until they really clearly see the detail of that, they're still like, what? And they fall back into their comfort position. Don't you agree, Carla? Isn't that what happens?
I mean, we teach as we were taught, and the idea of having to change that, especially when you're someone like me. I mean, you're almost through your career, right? I mean, why in the world would I change now? But I think we absolutely have to change to something different and not just modify. Doesn't work. We got to rethink, and we got to help people understand the urgency of doing that. It's really, it saddens me when so many times it's comes back to what's about the adults. It's really not about us. It's about kids.
Yeah, and it's sad because I felt that yesterday as we were running the panel in Dallas. And I won't name any names. I love all these people, but it's uncomfortable when you're near retirement to go, oh, I get it now. I'm going to change everything. I'm going to go back and be like a mini revolution. People bring pitchforks out and chase me, but I'm doing it anyway. That's like, almost no one really wants to do that, right? Like to really, like, so that's really what we're talking about here. Anyway, I'll turn it back over to you, Chris.
Well, no, I think this is a great conversation. And Carla, I was going to say, you work with adults also, right? The fact that you are a doctor and also work at the university level, I would say that you are a doctor that actually helps people, because sometimes people go, oh yeah, no, I'm not a doctor. not the kind that helps people. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. No, you do.
Wait a minute.
You actually do. So this is an interesting conversation because what are you starting to see as you work with adults and professionals that are either practicing in the field or aspiring to practice in the field? What sorts of things do you see that are coming up that are relevant to this kind of a shift, and maybe even, hopefully, evidence that there's a shift in thinking in that group of people?
So I'm fortunate that the folks that are in my class are, they're the leaders. They're aspiring superintendents. They are hungry for knowledge, and really in many ways what I present to them and open up to them is a whole new way of thinking, especially when Leilani got to speak to my class this year. I mean, it really, some of them you just saw the light come on. And are hungry for more and want to do more. But then I feel like what happens is you get back to school and you get back to the real world, and all of those desires and great ideas can somehow get pushed to the bottom. They're not a priority because there's so many other things that take priority. But I know that they want to make a change. I know that there's the desire there. They just need help in figuring out how to do that, how to phase that in, because you can't change it all at once, right? But you can't get stuck on one little change either.
Right. That's interesting, because I think it's every now and then, this is anecdotal, I really hate spending money on my car, right? And so if I have to fix something on my car, I know that it's probably critical. I know that my check engine light is on. I know that at some point it's going to start blinking and something may go horribly wrong. And yet I just need to get down the road right now. And right now, taking a couple of days out of my normal pace to get that car down to the mechanic and then spend some more money on it. And then, oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I get a loaner? Do I not get a loaner? What if I don't get a loaner? Am I riding my bike? All that stuff causes me to go, you know what? I'm totally not dealing with that right now. I know the check engine light is on. I know that means that there might be something really wrong with my system. And yet I think I'm going to choose to push that off a little bit right now, because I got to go to the grocery store. I need to get some dog food. Otherwise there's going to be a revolt back at home, and I just push it off. And I wonder if some of that is happening, right? We've got some critical things going on, and people are like, you know what, that's a nice thing. I see that it might be good, but I'm just not addressing that right now. Not because it's not urgent enough, maybe.
Yeah, and I also think it's largely like, what are you talking about? New model? Are you talking about all the kids being online again and from home? Because that didn't work. So you have to really actually have a clear understanding. What are you talking about? And then it does absolutely have to be baby stepped.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Do this now. Now do this now. Right.
Well,
you absolutely have to understand.
And what we're hearing too, and and I get it, is even the most gung-ho, let's do this, you can't give teachers one more thing.
You have to take something
exhausted. There's so much. We just can't ask them to do one more thing. So how do we make a change without stressing them out completely, because we already have a mass exodus, right?
Yeah, without breaking something. We don't want to make changes that are going to break some stuff unnecessarily. Although I think, I would contend that we do have to sort of stretch some boundaries, and we're going to have to stress the system in order to make a change of this magnitude. It's going to have to happen. And so what I tell people is that this is going to hurt. It's going to be a little painful for a while, and your brain's going to hurt. You're going to be learning some new stuff. So we know that we just talked about this. A great segue. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm already looking at your slide because listen and look. I'm one of those. I try to multitask. It's actually not true, but
no,
it's not really true. My brain can focus on two things at the same time. But anyway, I actually think in Dallas yesterday we discovered something really important. We listened to a lot of these people talk about where they're at, and at one point in time, either I or maybe you did this, Chris. We spit out, well, like, you got to take some stuff away from the teachers. So I think phase one for any school to get to the nirvana we're about to paint the picture on is you got to look at the fact that you're having every single teacher in America right now build everything either in Google Docs or some LMS, randomly Googling around, finding resources or scanning them in. Scanners are still being sold, by the way. People are still buying scanners, which is phenomenal to me. And they're knitting all this together, and then they're distributing it and getting pelted back with 16 emails and 19 phone calls, and then having to redistribute. And then kids can't find it's in the wrong folder, so they're pelting you. And they're like, where is it? And this is the most manual ever of a thing. And so step one we talked about in Dallas was like, listen, I think you need to understand what's going on in high value digital curriculum, like the good stuff. And take away a lot of this lesson planning thing, because it wasn't on teachers during the days of textbook anyway. Lesson planning was sort of there, but it was like, here's your book. And then you built lessons around that, which is really kind of like, we're going to do this project, we're going to do this, and there's some supplemental stuff, and there's a tweak for the kid who's got this lesson, learning difficulty. But pretty much it was laid out, right? Like it wasn't so much work. But we just put all of that on everybody. So we agree in doubt, you got to take some away. So when we think about that takeaway, what is your perception of teachers who'd be like, because you're doing this probably now. We got that you all want 16 math apps and everybody's using a different one. Could we just go down to one? How do you feel about that? Is there riots in the streets? What's happening?
Man, that's what I keep saying. Why do we need, 16 apps to teach reading? We really don't. And there are people that are going to want support on those 16 apps, and you don't have the manpower to support all of those. So to some degree, I think, people land on something nice and new and shiny that they think is going to do a great job, and they want to use that because I found it, right? But I really feel like you've got to centralize that, and you've got to say, okay, folks, we've vetted all these resources, and here's the one. This is the one that's going to be your best tool for teaching reading, and put some trust in that, right? And then just also allow your resource selection process to work and not approve everything, right? So there's some learning on both sides of that.
Yeah, but I think that based on the overwhelm you were talking about, like you can't put anything more on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think this first stage is take away, like spend a year taking away a bunch of stuff and streamlining, which I actually see happening sort of organically already in the field. Like you're probably trying to do it. And I've heard so many other superintendents say like that's it. Like what? We don't need 15,000 apps. What are you doing? So I feel like that's happening now. And I would say that that's stage one, to actually butter up the teachers to even accept a structural difference, is the taking awayness. Hi, Chris, glad you're back. You want to share your slide again?
Phew.
Okay.
Yikes. I'm using my hotspot right now. It's odd to me that would be more stable than whatever the centralized Wi-Fi is. But anyway, here we are. So I must have missed something brilliant. Did you solve all the problems?
Close.
Okay, good.
Yeah, well, you were gone in under 1 minute. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Fantastic. So you were talking about what's in the middle, right?
No, we were talking about in order to handle the problem of teachers have too much. And they don't want to accept anything change. Is stage one is take away. Streamline apps, streamline the construction of learning materials process, just get the viable curriculum map in place, which is matrix digital, right? We've talked about that. I know you're gonna go back to that, but just spend a year taking stuff away.
Right. And that starts with an assessment of where you are, right? Because you can't take stuff away that you don't know that you have. And what we are experiencing out there in the field is that a lot of folks don't know what's in the wild for them. They've got an ecosystem that includes things that may or may not be effective, and they might have the wild west of apps out there. It might be an app zoo that they have operating, and that's a craziness, right? Not only is that confounding for the technical system, to monitor all of those various things for safety and PII and all those things and security. But as a teacher, that's way overwhelming. It's way overwhelming. And I'm never, right, how am I ever, this also came up in Dallas. One of the comments that and discussions at one of our discussion tables was, there's teachers, they don't even know how to do this. What have we even done with PD? And how are we helping teachers to learn how to use these? We've given them the technical knowledge, and we've said, here's the bells and whistles and how the thing works, but have stopped short of saying, here's how you would use this in the context of designing a learning experience. And that's a little bizarre to me. And it sounds like an awful waste of time and money also. So we're going to move on because all of those are built into the rest of our conversation. So what I really want to do today is dig into two models. And I want to dig into the hybrid logistics model, and I want to dig into Hyflex, because this particular slide shows two sides of where we've been over the last several years and forever-ish. Right, so we've got online and distance, and yet neither of those is really it. Right, we've got something in the middle that does the best pieces of all of the things, and it allows us to lean on technology, and it allows us to exercise student and learner agency. It allows us to personalize experiences. And so that's what I want to talk about today. What I feel like is important is that we start to define those two models, because once we can expand the learning around those two models, then we have something to build upon, right? So logistics is talking about logistics is really the application of a workflow. We're managing student learning pace and use of space in a different way. And in this slide, we say that this is a new form of education, and it is. It's not a reform, it's a new form. And that's the thing that we're going to have to tackle. Hybrid Hyflex.
Can I just stress something on that?
Go ahead, do it.
So in your mind, what you're saying to yourself and you're imagining when you think about what that line just says, hybrid is application of workflow. Is that right now the burden that Carla was talking about, the workflow is all on the back of the individual teacher. They find it, they lesson sequence it, they determine when to release it to the students. Sometimes they're trying to customize, so they release independent stuff to one and not the others. But they're the hub of distribution. And then, like I said, they get pelted with all of the questions, all of the grading, all of the everything. There's no automation to the distribution model. There's missing workflow. But if something picks up the workflow, release on demand, manage, and then bring the teacher in, that's the difference between where we've been and what this is. Carla, does that make sense to you?
It does make sense to me. What came to mind though is I start thinking like a teacher, and what a teacher might think about this is, so we've been down the district prescribed curriculum. I mean, you do this now, you do it this way. Here are your resources. Here, you don't have to think about that, just do it. Well, that took away my autonomy as a teacher, right? Because I know my class, and I know what they need, and I don't need someone to tell me, what they need. So what comes to mind for me with this is, okay, so this is fantastic. Let's do it. How do we help teachers understand their role and importance in this?
I like that you say.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I just want to interject on that. And that is, you would necessarily need to build a viable curriculum map. That doesn't mean you wouldn't have teacher autonomy, both in the release of the workflow, right? Mm-hmm. And in the ability to trade out resources or put an additional one in the workflow. The idea is the workflow itself is missing from every other pattern that has gone before. So the function of being the hub of all push and then manage every subsequent step and all the backwash of, what do you need? Okay, no, you didn't get that. You can't find the right folder, blah, blah, blah. That's what we're talking about. So I think, yes, that's obviously the first thing a teacher says, because they say that now in all of the big apps that get thrown in front of them. They're like, this is really great, but I need to add this PDF. Where do I do that? Where do I upload? And then the publishers come back and they're like, oh, you can't do that. No, we're not going to open our backend systems for you to upload random things that could have a virus. Are you crazy? So, I've been hearing that for a while, and you're not incorrect. But you still are going to have to get to the point where there's something viable laid down as tracks to reduce workload, but never have it be an inflexible thing.
Well,
I
I
totally
think
agree with
that's-
you on that.
I agree in part, and so what I appreciate about that is that it's a yes and. And so in the systems that implemented, and we can go to the traditional curricular resource adoption, right? You adopt a resource. The ineffective systems said, hey folks, here's a pallet of stuff on your doorstep. Go for it. Do. And they may have given them about a half a day to sort of traipse through the very beginning pages of the teacher manual. And they may have glanced at the scope and sequence document that sort of lays out the map for it. And then what the ineffective system did was to say, like you said, Carla, on day 1, you're on page 1. On day 2, you're on page 2. Everyone should be finished with page 10 by the end of the first week. And you should be pacing along with that. And if you're not, then something's wrong with you, teacher. And that absolutely is the antithesis of any sort of implementation of any instructional material that ever makes sense, right? The systems that are successful use that as it is designed for, right? Even if you ask the developer of a curricular resource, they're going to say, there's more in there than you are physically going to have time to do. There just is. And so you're going to have to use your brain and take a look at this as a baseline and then use your teacher ability and design what is going to be most effective using some of these components and grabbing some of the others and build it as a design the learning experience for your kids. And what happens in successful systems is that they'll say, this thing is the floor. And you, at the very least, have to use this thing, but you can bring in more things that are going to round out and make this a much richer experience. And if you don't do that, then yes, you are taking away some autonomy. But I believe that you have to do that because if you don't, you're not providing a backbone. There's not a foundation from which to build, and then you're on sand, right? You can't build on sand. You got to set the floor, and the floor has to be rigorous, and it has to be the high quality. It has to be tier 1 resource, and then it needs support from the sides. So what we're talking about in these two models is yes, we do have to have a floor of support. Are we grabbing back some of the control about what is used for core? Yes, we are. We are, because as a system, we have to guarantee equity of experience across the system. And we can't do that if the floor is variable. On top of that, you can build, but you have to set the floor. And that's sometimes the sticking point. So I'm going to get back to this because I know that we have 2 models to dig into. The other one is hybrid logistics, right? So Hyflex is sort of the betweenness between sort of the traditional that you might imagine and something that is a lot more flexible, still maintains some aspects of a traditional system where you've got class, teacher, classroom, student type of relationships and ratios, but you start to mix it up a little bit, and you start to add times within the day that are much freer and allow for some voice and choice, and sort of break up that and disaggregate the schedule that usually exists, and does so in a manner that allows for the humans to more closely start to work with individual students or small groups. And that can be done on a broad scale, right? You see it done on a classroom scale, but it can absolutely be done on a broad scale. You're going to need some technology to help you to do that. It can be done analog in an approximation, but you really need to have some technology on board that's going to help you get that thing done. The top end of that would be the hybrid logistics contemporary model, and that is where, like Leilani is mentioning, we've got a robust system that is actually helping us move humans and resources through time and assign those people to certain activities and certain groups and spaces within the school day and within the school building and outside of it, because we know that that's all very flexible. So if think of those two things as the pinnacle of where we need to get to and where we need to progress, because that's where we're starting to head. I'm going to switch slides. Any commentary?
Yeah, I just want to say, I want to ask if Carl, if you've seen the same thing, because so we've been digging into some of these schools' viable curriculum maps, right? And actually starting to lay down all the tracks on everything. And one of the most shocking things that I'm finding is that the time on task to study one assignment or one part of a sequence that these publishers are laying out, right? I'm not talking about, and it should be this way too, in the courseware stuff, the stuff that's fully animated and you enter the dream world, right? Blah, blah, blah. And you're like, pre-tested, and then you're pushed into, math world 1. And then it just sort of pelts you with animation and things to widgety do. And it's like a game.
Right.
Even those are not structured for time. So as a teacher, you're like, go play the blah, blah math game, but you have no, and it's supposed to like give you feedback and a dashboard as a teacher, but really, how long did that take the kid to do, right? Like, there's no way for you to lesson plan because you really don't know, right? How long this is supposed to take. Hey, go do 4 modules. But teacher, I did module 1, took me a week and a half. Oh, well, good, get number 1 done, right? Like, this is the kind of stuff going on in the professional grade community, which is just making me like, what? Why did you do it that way? And then when you go into the courseware companies, a few of them will say, here's your course for English literature and lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. And within the lesson, read this, do the, take this, practice, and then do this quiz. And it assigns a little piece of time, 20 minutes, 35 minutes. Right. So now as a teacher, you're like, good, I know what I'm doing. If I'm going to sequence my kids through here, I can sort of go, okay, well, I only have an hour for language this every day. So I can sort of plot my way through. Okay. And then I can augment as needed. But almost universally, the stuff that is out there, except for video, which is standalone discrete learning object anyway, it doesn't have time. I don't know how that is affecting teachers, but it's got to be a horror show in terms of how you would, because you can't know. You're like, I can see that it hits this standard. I can see that it's doing this. It's kind of cute. It's covering these subjects. I'm going to grab it, but I have no idea how long it takes. And assign it to the kids? Seriously? Like, why is this missing from the publishing industry? This is driving me nuts. What is your thought?
Well, so what I think happens, okay, here's this great thing and it's going to cover these standards and I'm going to send you over here because we're doing station rotation. I'm going to make this station, it's going to be that piece of software. Go do it. But I think what happens is I, the teacher, have had no interaction with that. I really don't know because I haven't done it, right? And I think that's where a lot of it breaks down because it takes time. It takes time for me to get in there and learn that and experience that and understand what's going to happen for the students. So I think that's a problem.
Yeah, but it's more than just those modules that are a game you got to play in order to learn fractions kind of thing. It's the stuff coming out of the big old time publishers where they're having you read a PDF and then they're having you do this quiz thing, and neither of those have time attached to them.
Right.
So when you assign them, so let's say your kid going home at night and all your teachers are using various assorted courses and they're giving you homework and it's 8 hours worth of homework for one night.
Well, and again, that comes to knowing your students because they don't all read at the same pace, right? So remember when I was an English teacher and we assigned the novel and I want you to read 3 chapters tonight. Well, that assumes that I think everybody is a fantastic reader and you can just speed right through that and you're going to be done in, an hour and a half. Not everybody reads like that. So, you have to take those things. It's kind of a guessing game either way you go.
I think so.
Yeah, that's true.
But I also think I'm glad you mentioned station rotations. Some of the more artful applications of something like that were ones that had students on a path. They understood what the process was and what each of those stops was, and they also gave the kids some approximate times that they might be shooting for. And they would say, it should take you approximately this much time to get through this aspect of your learning path today. And it might take you a little bit longer, but this is kind of what you should be shooting for. And they did that because pacing, the ability for a student to sort of drift off into space if they're not understanding something and then completely blow the rest of the day is very real. And so unless you start to place an expectation, even if it's an approximate time, right? You can pick a range. It should take you between 15 to 20 minutes to do this thing. Ready, go. Unless there's serious misconceptions about content or process, plus the processing and cognitive ability of the individuals doing those things, those are all variables. And yet, in order for me to plan, I think back to my own planning as a teacher, I made assumptions about how long it was going to take. My best laid plan never ever happened. Not once did it ever happen. It was either too long or too short. And I very rarely, if ever, and this still continues today, I very rarely underplan. I almost always overplan. And that's, that's just me, right? However, that means that time becomes elastic. And I've watched this happen. If I let a unit go too long, I'm like, oh my gosh, we started this, 2 weeks ago? We got to be done, you guys. We got to be done. We need to move along. And that's a bummer because I misjudged. I did. And you're right. I think it's, that's a whole different horizon room topic, Lonnie. We can roll that into a completely different set of conversations, because that's one I'd love to have a publisher on the line with us on that one, because we need some answers on it, and we need for people to start thinking differently. So let's dig into these models.
They'd be like, "Why'd you invite me on there?
If it's okay with you,
a humdinger. You threw me a humdinger." Okay, so what I want to ask Carla right now is, when we discuss this hybrid Hyflex, and we say the words, there's an inevitable new model emerging in the market. It's inevitable because of the pressure from the outside, the way the outside is reconfiguring itself in a consumer chaos market directly to your potential learner, right? And that happened during the pandemic. The shopping behavior and the finding my way off grid to homeschooling, off the charts. I mean, it more than doubled the number of homeschoolers in a year, right? So when I hear that, if I put myself in your shoes, and tell me if I'm wrong, I hear the words new model, and I think you're talking about online learning. You're talking about what didn't work for some of the kids, and I'm not in that. I want them back in front of me, right? And that is not what we're talking about. Hybrid Hyflex, hybrid logistics contemporary is a new way to intersect the teacher with more efficiency. And it will use many elements of online, but it's definitely more human intersection than online. It's like this in-between weird world that's not either one. What would you think people are going to hear when they hear this? Do you think they're going to hear, like, I'm talking about online? What do you think?
I think for a lot of folks, it's going to be really, really difficult for them to wrap their heads around it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so different. So I think that they're going to need a great visual representation and just here's a playbook of how this could happen for you. Here's what it would look like. Here's what, the teacher matters. Teachers always matters. And here's how your role will change. And here's how you'll be able to be more efficient. And here's how we're going to take some things off your plate and, really talk them through that whole idea, because I'm an average teacher. This blows my mind, right? Because it's not how I teach. And I do think online, and that didn't work. And you're right. I want my kids in front of me, which they would be sometimes.
Yeah,
Some of
they
the
could
time.
be, and then you have like in the upper grades, you have kids that, they're super duper A+ all the time, and you reward them with a gold star for the week, and you can be remote at any time if your
Mhm,
parents approve.
mhm.
So every meeting that you're required at, you can use the Zoom link if you want, because your grades are so high as a reward, right?
Right.
Yeah, but the in front of you all the time doesn't really go away. It's just maybe strategic. It's not the whole hour.
Right.
It's the 20 minutes you needed to organize a discussion, a mini lecture. And then they were all working by themselves on their stuff in your room. Now, why do they have to be in front of you? Why are you like, they could just go back to their homeroom and do that, run by somebody else while you roam and help
Right.
the kid who needs it.
I don't think so again, it's be in front of me, meaning you're physical, you're here, or you're away from me, you're online. But I'm looking at the models, blended, flipped, simultaneous teaching. We never really even were successful with flipped, right? Because we don't really understand that concept. So there's a lot of work that we have to do to help teachers understand what that really, really is and what it really looks like. And that, a 45-minute video is not going to cut it. Nobody's going to watch that, right? So I think they've got to have a real clear understanding of, this is what my role will be. This is how it will affect me. This is why it's good for my kids. This is what it could look like.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that you hit on something really important, because I personally think blended is way harder than hybrid logistics. Because blended required you as a teacher to look at, like, you got an hour a day or 45-minute carding unit for language. And what you're supposed to do is active participation teaching that whole 45 minutes. And then homework is the blended part. And that's all the passive reading stuff you can do away from the building. That is a very intensive 45 minutes every day. And it's not a human job to do that, right? You really, are you supposed to, that's hard. That's super duper hard to plan that.
Well, I think it also requires that you step back from what you think about as teaching, because I think, having done those types of things and having watched people do this artfully, what they're doing within that teacher in that face-to-face time is actually using all of the skills that these kids are going to have to perfect and develop. And those are collaborative skills. They're collaborative learning skills. They're using all the strategies that force talk and force reflection and processing together between humans. And the real power of these other types of models that use human time and space differently is actually that. It's we can take a bunch of the stuff that is relatively, could be active learning, but doesn't have to be in front of me, and it places it somewhere else. And then we get to maximize the time that you and I are together. Because right now I can help you process, and I can put you and a couple of other kids into a structure that is going to help you to cement and deepen the learning and understanding, and then apply it. And that's not something that a machine can do. That's a human thing. And if we can help folks understand that is the goal. The goal is not just give homework. When you bring the homework back in, what we're going to do is spend that 45 minutes going line by line on that homework and calling on people individually to give the answer to problem number 5. I've watched that happen. And it caused I wanted to stab myself in the eye with a pencil. And that's not what we're talking about. And yet some people are like, oh yeah, nope, totally. We flipped that. We flipped it and we blended it. And now I assigned the homework. They spent inordinate amounts of time wasting their off time on this thing that then we dragged them through for 45 minutes. That's bananas.
Yeah.
It's
It is.
missing. What's missing from that whole idea of blended learning or flipped learning is coaching. And we don't invest in the coaching, right? Teachers need help in implementing any model. They need help. And we just don't invest enough in the coaching to make people available for folks.
I agree. I think Carla, you and I in our last conversation had this discussion about coaching, and this is very near and dear to my own heart because I was an instructional coach, and I would contend that a school system cannot fully implement successfully unless they have instructional coaches. It can't be done.
Can I just
administrator? Yep.
Yeah. I can see that from the companies that do the coaching, and I can see that from schools that are really doing it. I know you guys have lived it. I haven't lived it, but I will tell you, in the process of our onboarding a school to use hybrid logistics, I would say the word teaming is more important than coaching, because for a teacher to arrive at what she or he is going to do in the lesson, they can kind of put it all together in what they're going to do, like what they have to do. But they're looking more for like a sounding board. A lot of times somebody's going to go, that's going to work. Good. Lay that track down. Good. Okay. Now next one, what are you doing? The teaming, what I'm saying is teaming seems, and you guys can tell me I'm wrong, I'm totally happy with that, but teaming seems almost more important than just coaching, because you can be off alone in your own room and get away with murder, basically, of not doing adequate planning and just sort of basically getting by. And in your mind, like, I'm supposed to do this better and blah, blah, blah. I gotta but if you're teamed and you're co-creating something, you're under the social pressure of, does this look okay? Okay, good, let's do it. And then the other person gives you an idea, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, let's do this, right? But you're doing it. It's all getting done. It's all the tracks are getting laid, which is different than coaching in that the action of doneness is actually getting done. You're not just told what to do and learning what to do. You're doing it.
But you
I
need
love
them
that idea
both.
of teaming. Huh?
You need them both.
You do. So I would respond to that
I like
in that the teaming aspect is very important, and that's what PLCs are for, right? The
I was thinking
idea
the same
of a
thing,
PLC.
Chris.
The idea of a PLC is supposed to be the team, right? And so highly functioning PLCs act like that, and yet they are not as successful without a coach. So then what happens is that unless you're running a very strict lesson study type of a structure, which includes peer coaching, and unless you know what instructional coaching really is, it's really difficult for you to move off of, I'm collaborating now, I have a team, we are holding each other accountable, we're helping each other, we lean on each other, we're sharing resources, all the good things that we've experienced in parts of highly functioning teams. But without the feedback loop and without the co-planning and co-creating and having the ability for a coach to ask questions about this plan that you're creating that have a broader view, it's difficult to step up a layer and see the broad spectrum if you're the team in the creation seat. And so I agree, Carla. I would contend that yes, effective teaming is necessary, but coaches have to be present in some form. The function of that coach has to be present, and it can't be the administrator.
Well, it's great to talk about it. It's great to be in a PLC. PLCs are very difficult for a lot of folks to do it effectively, to actually become a PLC, right? But the actual implementing whatever it is. Okay, so Chris, your kids did great on this unit. Why did they do so well? What did you do? How did you teach it? Great, let's do it. But I go back to my classroom. Sounds good. I don't know how to do it. So I need a coach to help me get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. Agreed. And of course, we're digging in below the surface of the models that we purported to talk about today, and which is fine. I love that we're having a great conversation because these are all the things that are real, right? This is the stuff that's on people's minds. And as they process through these things, of course, you go into these tendrils of process and how to, and that's important because that's all the stuff that we hear, right? I mean, these are the rabbit holes that we all go down when we start talking about change. And when you start talking about models, you go into what is it going to feel like as a teacher, which is great. I love that we're doing that because as a teacher, you should be thinking about what is this going to feel like as a learner?
Mm-hmm.
What parallel paths? hold up. So I think it's really good. I think this is valid conversation, and maybe we're not digging into the models quite as much as we could, and we can always come back to this stuff. Folks that are listening in, where we are. We're talking about hybrid Hyflex and hybrid logistics all the time. We're in Orlando. If you happen to be in Orlando and you're free tomorrow, get on down here, because we want you engaged in the conversation. We're going to be digging into this stuff. And so the hybrid logistics model, I'm going to move us off to that, because it's going to underpin some of these things, right? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about the ability for humans to be maximized. And if I took the two examples that we just used, team and coaching, those two groups of humans have to be maximized in their time. And if we're not leaning on technology in the way that a hybrid logistics model will help us to do, then it's really, really hard. Lonnie, like you said, it's not a human job, right? There's so many actions that have to occur, and so many think abouts and so many layers, that I can't step back as a team and start to reflect on the effectiveness of the thing that we all planned together. I may not have a coach who can step in, because there are other functions going on in the school system that are pulling my coach away from their real job, which is helping the teachers to be teachers and helping them to access learning with students and plan engaging experiences and use the resources that are provided, all the things that we know are necessary. And guess what? The hybrid logistics model is the closest thing that I've seen to being able to help us do that. And it's because we're leaning on technology, right? We have to do that. There's no other way. And we have to manage those workflows. And guess who does that really well? The machine does. The robot
And
does
I think
that really well.
I think it's important to comment that if people ask, what is it? It's a platform. It's not an LMS.
Mhm.
It's not a student information system. It's not a piece of content. It's a time and space management machine that would operate with all of those under its umbrella. So this is a really new thing. This is the first emergence of a technology that layers on top of everything else, including your single sign-on, right? All of those other systems you already have, they're all individually touched by every one of your users. Your users are not managed for their interfacing with all of those, for when and how, as well as an interweaving with the human aspect. It's all manual. It's all manual. So logistics is a big, broad concept itself, right? And it is totally new. I mean, we could probably do like a year of our events running around the country just saying, this is the definition of logistics. Talk amongst yourselves, right?
Right.
Right, Carly? What do you think of that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's awesome, and we need to let technology do what it can do, and it does this very, very well. We've also got to help people understand how it can do it. I mean, I'm listening, I'm going, oh my goodness, I'm thinking of all the things that don't work together now. How in the world is this going to work, right? But we've got to do it, and we've got to help folks understand that there's a way we can change for positively and do what's right for kids and still be efficient.
Yeah.
I think it's important also to understand that it's not a tomorrow thing, right? This is something that's iterative, and it's going to take some time. And while we all can get impatient and want for this to be like, let's flip the switch, let's do this. That's not real, right? And we all know that. And yet sometimes we get caught up in the immediacy of the thing, and we get excited. And I know that I do. And I get excited about the change. And I'm like, let's go do it. Let's do it tomorrow. Let's go. Let's hop in the car. Let's roll. And that's, we know that systems that are sustainable aren't implemented in that way. And we, all of the pieces, all of the pre-learning, all of the foundational learning that has to go along with that, all of the assessment of system readiness, all of those aspects of where are we today and how do we move forward, all that stuff starts with a vision, and it starts with an acknowledgement that we have to do something differently. And if we can get more people acknowledging that the model that we're currently using doesn't work, and then also at the same time acknowledge that, hey, maybe there's this other thing that could work, then we've got something. Then we're taking a step forward. And maybe it is that we have to that the entirety of our events in the next year and a half are saying those words and saying, think about this, go talk amongst yourselves. How does this reflect upon your own practice? And not that we don't do that, but now we got to have some action. And it's we've talked about this. This is the choir, I think.
Yes.
And now it's time to go act.
Well,
So
we need a bigger choir that will help us make this happen. I mean, I've been doing this a really long time, and I've always been that let's make it happen. But by golly, it is time to make it happen. So we need to get folks to understand the why and the need to move faster than slower, because we've moved slowly for far too long.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed.
I totally agree
Agreed.
with you. And my why is reduce the teacher burden and make the teacher the magnificent, coin that we use in its very special capacity to truly help the child, right? Not buried under all this, stuff that they like another report. Seriously? Like, that's what they say, right? Like, if you're going to give me one more report, I will slap you. I was like, seriously, if I have to do that, I am going to quit.
Well,
I get that a lot. If you're going to give me one more technology thing, get out.
Get out. So we don't do that to doctors, do we?
No,
Right?
No.
We don't
Well,
say
I
maybe
was
to
talking about that
doctors.
with someone today. We do not.
Yeah.
We
And
didn't
so,
know.
Treat
No.
teachers like professionals.
how is that
Yeah,
different? How is that different? I mean, we've got a very specialized individual, professional, who has very highly specific skills and training, and yet we water them, we weight them down with all of this stuff that doesn't allow them to perfect their practice and practice the thing that they're good at.
That's a whole
Yeah,
nother
we don't leave
discussion
them in the
on
same room with. Go ahead.
That's a whole nother discussion on the things that are mandated to us from government.
Good. I
Hmm.
took
Right.
note. Noted.
That one will make me cry. That'll just make us all cry.
Yeah.
Bring Kleenex. That'll be
Mhm.
the dark horizon room. We'll do that. We can come to
Dark
the light
horizon.
through that one. Well,
Well,
you know
I know
what?
what my takeaway from today is that we do need to create a better visual. We had the game, remember, Carla, where people play the
Mhm.
game?
I love the game.
We need to maybe make the game an animated video that we show. This is how it
Right.
works. This is what happens. Yeah, thank you. You just
Yes.
gave me a big giant task to do. Thanks very much.
You're
Carla.
welcome.
Piling on, Carly. You're piling on.
You're
I'm not
piling
taking
on.
away. I'm sorry, Leilani. I'm just not taking anything away.
Yeah,
Yep,
it's totally
that's right. We
fine.
I'll
just
do
said
better.
that. We said we have to take things away, right? We're yikes. We're not practicing as we have preached. So, I think my takeaway is also that, and for me, I feel like you, Carla, we've been talking the talk for a long time, and you and I see eye to eye on this. It's time to act, and that is, our job of educating is never ending. It's not ever going to end, because as soon as we start moving more specifically and on a broader base with hybrid logistics, lo and behold, the next iteration of that is going to appear. It's going to already be ready to change. And we have to accept that we're in a cycle of continuous improvement, and that is good. We're going to live in a state of chaos that is positive, because that positive energy that comes along with that chaos puts us in a state of disequilibrium, which causes the positive changes that will continue to help us grow and move forward. And so
That was deep. That was super
That
deep.
was
that
philosophical.
is super
deep.
deep. I'm sorry to leave that with you, but that's where we're going to go, because we're not ever stopping. This is a journey, my folks, and we're on it, and we're on it together, and there's people that can help, but we got to go. Let's take the steps. So hybrid logistics is a brand new technology. As Leilani was saying, it may or may not be powered by kryptonite in a flux capacitor, and it may or may not take 121 gigawatts to get up to speed and travel
I think it
time.
should,
But
though.
you never know. You never know. If I could find Emmett Brown, he may help us in our endeavor. So
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone who joined us. Joined us today. I just skipped past the slide that was the most important one, which happens to be at the very end, because what we're talking about in the next iteration of this, in our next very, very light horizon room, although we might be talking about some heavy stuff, we always do. This one's about peanut butter cups. And so if you don't love peanut butter cups, well, maybe you're peanut intolerant. And what we're really talking about, though, is teaching and tech, right? You've got to be hand in hand. That is a classic combo. and it's my peanut butter and your chocolate, and we are together. We're walking down the road together. We're talking the same talk. And the more systems that I talk to, unfortunately and dismayingly, the more systems that I understand are not aligned in that way. And unfortunately, that's a requirement. It has to happen. And if it isn't happening in your system, let's figure out how to make it happen. I've got some folks lined up to talk about that topic. They're engaged, they're energetic, they are experiencing those same things. So thanks for joining us in the Horizon Room. We're signing off from Orlando, Florida, and we will see you on October 26th, 3 p.m. Eastern. So long, folks.
Thanks, Carla.
Bye. Let's talk soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.